Hi and welcome back to a new video. This is probably the first time on this channel that we are doing a Q&A. It's also the first time in like 2 years that we're doing one in general. The last time was on the other channel, so it's been quite a long time. And sometimes under some videos we get comments which are more in the direction of like personal interest or like, I don't know, don't fit to the dedicated video. That's why I decided it might be time to host a Q&A. Again, I asked you to post some questions and will do my best to answer these. I have Cora here with me and she will read through the questions for us.
How surprised do you get when looking at how overclocking is currently, compared to how it was in the beginnings? Has the transformation happened faster than could have been conceived in the past?
Looking at overclocking from a history point of view, I think the origin of this was more that you could turn a cheaper product into like a better performing product, you could save money, and it was much more of a niche thing. And back then it was much more of a like forbidden thing to do. Vendors would not promote it, neither the mainboard manufacturers nor let's say the CPU manufacturers, just looking at these two and neglecting the GPU for a second. And I think in the time of like 2000, maybe 2006, some of the vendors picked overclocking up as a marketing thing. Because sometimes you had dedicated overclocking records. I think the daily overclocking was not that interesting for, let's say, the mainboard manufacturers or like the CPU manufacturers, but some extreme guys out there still already did their magic and created some very like insane scores and very interesting things. And I think at a certain point they figured out that if they just pick up the stuff the community was doing, they could promote their products. And then at a certain time, they also decided to make dedicated products for this. Let's say the first Rampage Extreme, or like an EVGA card, like a classified card, an MSI Lightning graphics card. Those products originated out of overclocking. And at that time, there was a huge room for improvements. So a lot of the PCBs were not technically on the best level. You had MOSFETs on GPUs that could be improved quite a lot. They were running hot, like insanely hot. So just adding amount of phases would already improve it. Then adding higher quality phases on GPUs would improve it. That was a time where overclocking changed the community quite a bit and also the industry, because they at a certain point figured out that if they would promote higher quality products, they could charge more money for it. And I think that happened mainly from like 2005 to 2010, maybe 2012. That was still a point where overclocking was quite attractive for them from a marketing point of view. And then suddenly, I don't know what exactly triggered this, but overclocking became again more of a niche thing and went out of the focus of the, let's say, mainboard manufacturers, for example. You could definitely feel that for example, MSI stepped back from hosting the MOA. Gigabyte was not doing the GOOC anymore. ASUS was not doing the open overclocking competition anymore. So there were a lot of things just disappearing from the market, because I think the market was also saturated by overclocking marketing. You could call it like that probably. And also one huge factor is that, from my opinion at least, because Intel also picked this up, they added the Caseking, which is a good and a bad thing at the same time. So they opened up for overclocking quite a bit. So Intel is very open and they are trying to push overclocking. But at the same time, they're limiting overclocking to the high-end SKU, which makes sense because they figured out a lot of people are interested in this. And if they have their dedicated overclocking SKU, which is the most expensive one, they can earn more money. It's in the end, everything is about money in this industry, right? And when they figured out that the high-end or most high-end SKU will only benefit from overclocking, they kind of killed the origin of overclocking. Like, you couldn't get the cheaper CPU anymore and just overclock it, have fun with it. You always had to buy the most high-end one, which was already running quite on the edge. And that is, or was, a problem. It still kind of is, because it's limiting overclocking to a specific crowd that has the money to participate and is accepting that you're only getting, I don't know, additional 3, 4, 5% maybe out of this. And that's what changed overclocking quite a bit.
What's your thoughts on the rising power consumption of flagship GPUs? When top-end cards consume 500 watts, is it going too far? Personally, when I game nowadays, my PC makes the room significantly warmer and it actually makes the gaming experience pretty bad.
That is something I find odd and interesting at the same time. Just from my personal level, getting a card that consumes like 500 or 600 watt, for me as a reviewer and like as an enthusiast, is entertaining and also fun to play with. I like modding these cards. I like developing cooling solutions for this. So I really enjoy getting this as a challenge. But looking at this from a gaming perspective, because I also game in my free time, obviously. And then, for example, I have a RTX Titan, which is GTX 280 based, or 280 Ti. So it has much less power consumption than like a 3090 or a 3090 Ti. And certainly, I would personally not put a 3090 Ti into my personal rig for the same reason. Like if I would sit in my room and it's getting warmer and warmer because my PC consumes like 1000 watt constantly, that's definitely not enjoyable. And also looking at this from an like environment point of view, it's not a good thing to see this development going to like 500, 600, 700 watt GPUs. At the same time, it's only a small niche, I think, which is buying these cards, but still the impact should be noticeable. I mean, if you look at this from, I don't know how many millions of cards they make and they all consume so much power, it's definitely something you have to think about also from an environmental point of view. And that's definitely not a good development, at least from my personal perspective. But then also people should not feel pushed to buy these products. It's the same with a 3090 or a 3090 Ti. When I always tell people in the video, the last card I would recommend to get is like a 3080 or 3080 Ti, I honestly mean that. Like buying a 3090 Ti just makes no sense. From an overclocking point of view or like a benchmarker point of view, if you participate in HWBot, I would totally get a 3090 Ti simply because it gets you the highest points to participate in the benchmarking ranking. But getting this for a gaming rig certainly just doesn't make any sense for me. The only thing that could change this is the consumer. If less people are buying these products or are less interested in these products, the industry will change this. But let's say hoping for the EU, for example, to change this, I don't think this is going to happen because we already saw some EU laws about energy in the past and they certainly did not help because they only help for commercial like SIs. If they build PCs, they have certain limitations about standby power and stuff, which is fine. But if you're just a private person building your own PC, you don't fall under this law. So you can do whatever you want. And then it's your own personal decision if you step up to buy a product like this, or if you decide it's maybe not a good idea to buy a product like this. Yeah. So yeah, it's a mixed feeling thing. I find it entertaining and fun to play with, but for my personal rig, I would not put them in there.
This is more of a product question. What is the intended use case for graphite thermal pads? How does the performance compare the thermal paste? I've been doing a lot of repair work and I wonder if there's a way to spend less on the thermal paste basically.
So graphite pads are the same as like an indium heat spring, for example. So those are the things you maybe saw in Linus Tech Tips video when he disassembled one of the IBM power servers. There are different thermal interface materials for different use cases. The best you can still get, I mean, let's neglect liquid metal for a second, but the normal conventional thermal paste will give you the best results for a certain moment. It will give you the best result, let's say, for a month, because these kind of products, just because of physical influences, they always will degrade over time. To a certain degree, then they will stop degrading, but there's always a certain degradation for every single conventional thermal paste. That's just the nature of things. That's the law of physics. There's nothing you can do about that. So if you want to get the best performance, you always have to stick to conventional thermal pastes. But let's say you're building a PC with, I don't know, like a 5600X and just a normal AIO or even an air cooler. It won't matter if your CPU is like running at 75 degrees Celsius or at 78 degrees Celsius, right? And then you might consider that having a bit higher temperature at the start, but a very stable temperature over 10 years is a good thing. Then you can get products like this. Like that's why we have Carbonaut at Grizzly, because that's the same type of thing. Or like those graphite sheets, or like the indium heat spring, all of these kind of products, which are solid materials, they will not change over time. They will always stay the same. If you put them on there, they have and let's say you have 78 degrees Celsius on your CPU, after 5 years, it will still be the same. So that's definitely something to consider if it's like a mid-range or low-end PC and you want to step away from any kind of maintenance. That's also why these products are interesting for some SIs. You can completely neglect the maintenance point of view. That's why these products are interesting. For a high-end gaming PC, if you're looking at like custom water cooling and like you're going for every single degree, you might go for direct eye cooling, then you also might want to go for the best thermal solution, would be probably liquid metal in this case. And it just depends on what your use case is, but that's probably what graphite sheets are the best for.
Can you talk about the different businesses you're involved in? What is your role at each? What is your vision for each? And what are you most proud of with each?
I mean, for you, it's definitely YouTube. That's what you can see. For me, time-wise, it's definitely Thermal Grizzly. I put in the most time, and also because I have the most responsibility as an individual there. Because, I mean, YouTube, essentially, I still have 2 people working there. I mean, it's Cora, who's doing the camera work, also cutting the videos, and also doing a lot of the paperwork in the background, like taking care of invoices and stuff. So she's doing that. Then we have Hauke, who is also doing a lot of research in the background. He's only working like part-time, only I think 1 day a week. And he's mainly there for doing research. Let's say I have a specific topic where I'm not sure about some technical aspects, like I need something to be double-checked, or just basic research about products or like advertisement. Let's say if we get some kind of request, then that all goes to him. So that's basically what we're doing at Der Bauer as YouTube. But for Thermal Grizzly, because it's a much bigger company, much bigger. I mean, just from a revenue point of view, it's like 50 times bigger. And that's why also we have a lot more employees. Right here in Berlin, we have about 10 who are working here for engineering and also producing things. And I mean, globally speaking, much more than that. But for Thermal Grizzly, it's certainly more. I mean, just looking at the company from a size point of view, we have much more employees here who we have to take care of, and already that is a completely different thing. That's also something I kind of underestimated. Like at the first point, when you think about hiring more people, then you always think that you can just delegate more of your work to these people, but essentially at a certain point you also figure out that it's pretty much the opposite way. Like you have to work for these people, and you also have to take care of them. Everyone is an individual, they have individual requests and like personal problems and everything. And you have to be there for them, like doesn't matter what time it is, what day it is. And yeah, so that's something I underestimated a little bit, but that's also something I pretty much enjoy. So that's a cool thing about running such businesses. So Thermal Grizzly is probably the biggest thing for me, because we also have the biggest responsibility there for all the employees. Because essentially YouTube, it's a fun thing, and it doesn't really matter if, let's say, I'm not uploading a video for a week. It doesn't really do anything. But for Grizzly, it's a bit different because we have more responsibility, we have people we have to pay and everything. And so that's certainly much more different. So like responsibility and time-wise, Grizzly for me is the biggest thing, also the thing I'm probably the proudest of, because just building something completely from scratch definitely takes a lot of time, resources, and something that also kind of teaches you that you should have more respect for others who are self-employed and running businesses. For example, Linus is a great example here, like starting his own YouTube channel, like growing this out from a different company, then building this up. And now, I don't know, he has like 30 or 40 employees there. And just the time and the responsibility put into this just deserves a lot of respect, like a huge amount of respect. And that's also what you kind of learn over the years. Then one more thing we're doing is HWBot, but HWBot is for me personally nothing I run as like a real business from a business point of view. Just this exists for me because it has a lot of emotional value to me. I think it's a very important platform to have. It's something we have to have. We have to conserve for future generations to kind of conserve what we already have as info in the database. That's already worth a lot. And also the opportunity that you can step into overclocking, you can learn so many things, this definitely has to be conserved. And that's why, even if this is not creating any revenue, that just doesn't matter on HWBot side, but we have to keep this to get fresh blood into the overclocking community. So those are the three main aspects. Then I'm doing some like small things on the side, a bit with like real estate and stuff, but it's more like from like you get your money from your businesses and what do you do with it? Just reinvest. So yeah, most of the things I'm doing is YouTube, Thermal Grizzly, HWBot.
Have you driven on the Nordschleife? If so, what was your fastest time? I see you've gotten more work done. If you like to share any meanings to your TEDs, that'd be cool. I miss GN X der Bauer content.
Very interesting, but no, I have not driven on the Nordschleife yet. I probably won't. I'm just too afraid, to be fully honest. If this was an empty track and I could just try it myself, then maybe I could get used to this and maybe feel more confident or like, I don't know, a bit more secure on there. But the way people drive there, because there are a lot of very, very skilled drivers and they drive on the edge. And if you're there like unskilled, because I would consider myself a very unskilled driver. I mean, I can drive on the road, but that has nothing to do with driving on a racetrack, right? So I basically have zero experience there. And being thrown on the track with experienced people, I think is a quite big challenge. That's why I don't really want to do that, because like especially with my GTR, now that GTRs are not available anymore in Europe or like in Germany, you cannot buy them anymore. It's pretty difficult to replace. So if I crash it again, because I already crashed my GTR once, it was not bad. It was just a few like tiny damages on the chassis, so not really a big problem. But if you crash on a Nordschleife, then most of the time it's bye-bye car, and I just don't want to do that. So that's why I did not drive on the Nordschleife yet. Maybe I will do it one day, but right now, no intention to do it. Regarding the Gamers Nexus question, I actually talked to Steve a few weeks ago, and he also pointed out that we should do some content again together. And I also said to him that I thought about going back to the US to also meet Splay, for example, a very good friend of mine. Haven't seen him in like, I don't know, like 3 years. Also want to do some content with him or just overclock with him for fun. And at that time, maybe also visit GN would definitely be nice. I would definitely love to see Steve again. And also, I mean, I've never been to their studio. They have a new one now, a much bigger one. Get a tour there, also do some content with him. Definitely looking forward to do that. Maybe end of the year, we will see. So regarding the tattoos, most of them are definitely related to, or all of them are related to either time and Stargate. So time for me is an important thing because might sound stupid, but I'm as a person, I'm thinking about like dying every single day. It might sound horrible, but it's actually not. It's just a very good motivation that you spend your time and to never forget that your time is running out every single day. I have a lot of like tattoos that are reminding of time, and the rest is basically Stargate stuff. That right here is the Mask of Ra, which you can find either in the first movie, like the cinema movie, or you can find it in the episodes that mean probably the most for me, which is Möbius. That should be season 8 and the last 2 episodes. So this is this one, and also you can see the pyramids with the jumper on here, which also appear in Möbius. Here I have an Anubis mask, which probably nobody saw so far, but yeah. So most of them are like Stargate related. Also this one is a gate address from one of my favorite episodes. So that's it about the tattoos. Still planning to get a few more to fill up the arm, and yeah, most of them will be Stargate related.
Who is your favorite character on Stargate SG-1?
I mean, the best character in Stargate obviously is O'Neill. There's nothing around that. Richard Dean Anderson is like probably the best role he ever played, and the character itself is just amazing. Apart from that, McKay in Stargate Atlantis is also one of my favorite actors, because like when he appeared first in the normal Stargate, it's a character you really hate. It's a character you just cannot stand. But then over time in Atlantis, he gets such a nice character. He's just getting such a nice person that the way this is acted is brilliant in my eyes. So those are the 2 favorite characters for me.
Will next-gen graphics card will need more than PCIe Gen 3.0 x16 for the high-end models? And will a 9900K bottleneck the next-gen GPU in 4K?
Especially in 4K, you should not worry at all. A 9900K should be fine in 4K for at least 2 more generations, I think, especially if you overclock it a bit, but 8 cores with high frequency definitely should be fine, especially if you're running 4K. Even in WQHD probably should be no problem at all, so you probably don't have to upgrade. Regarding PCI Express, I think 3.0 could be limiting in 4K at a different point. So if it's RTX 40, maybe you might be limited by, I would assume 5, 6, 7% maybe, but not 10. I don't think we will see like 10% penalty on the performance there. But that's also why I think moving over to like PCIe 5.0 could be a very interesting thing, because then you could utilize, for the future at least, platforms with less lanes. Like you could have a GPU with PCIe 5.0 and 8 lanes should be sufficient for most of the GPUs. So definitely the lane thing should be interesting for the future.
Where did Mary go?
That is a question, especially in the German channel, a lot of people asked. She's still there. She's right now behind the camera. She's asking the questions for us. So there was something going on in her private life in the last 1 and 2 years. Basically, to keep it short, there was a person who was trying to make her life hell, and we have to keep her out of the internet, out of public, to just protect her. And that is the reason why she's not in the videos anymore for now. It might change in the future, but for now, that is the best decision. All right, so thank you for your questions. And if you have any further questions, if you want to see this again in the future, feel free to leave feedback under this video. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time. Bye-bye.